physical layer. Okay. So tell me, what does a physical layer do? What is it for? What does physical layer do? Physical media, that's right. So you're talking about wires, cables, um, access point, devices, um, network interface cards, right? So basically, and the one that kind of stands out is a network interface card. And network interface card is where you plug in your cables, right? And so it is all about the physical media, and it is all about the physical signals that's being sent, whether it being wired or wireless, right? And so and for example, when we talk about wire, a lot of people just think about, okay, so we, plug it in, it's like Cat5 or something, right? Something that looks like a telephone wire, but with a lot more, internal cables inside, okay? It used to not be that way. In fact, I used to pull cable. It's called a fat yellow, fat cable, or thin nets, where you had like a black like cable with core, like I think it's an iron core inside. Okay, yeah, Terry. BNC connectors with terminators, exactly. That one, yeah. Okay, so now that I have a comrade in arms here, the Terry. So the thin net, I think it was 250. Was it meters? There's a limitation as to the length, right? So the big yellow one, I think, was 500 meters. I think. Um, is that right? Was it meters or is it feet? I just can't remember. Yeah, it was feet. Okay, it's 250 feet and 500 feet. Okay, that makes sense. Meters will be just too much. Yeah, yeah, it would be. I said that's too long, but I turns corners with thick net. That's right. Yeah, I know. It's a big old yellow thing, and I had to like pull it. And for those of you that don't know, back in the old days, you had to actually like to connect a workstation to it. It was like a little alligator connection that you have to actually punch a hole and go through the shield and go into the core, and you have to like clamp it. Anyway, it was a pain, you know. But those cables are obviously physical layer cables. And then one day, somebody said, "Look, Terumi, you don't have to be pulling those cables a lot." Well, but we had to. So 500 meters, I'm sorry, 500 feet just wasn't enough for us. Okay, but so there was a trick. Oh, and by the way, why is there a length limitation? Why would there be like 250 feet limitation or 500 feet limitation for a piece of cable? Attenuation, exactly. So because of the impurities within the media itself, as you throw like a digital signal over it, the analog signal over it, it attenuates. That is, it degrades, okay, as it travels across. So IEEE, those guys who come up with standards say, look, we can't promise you good signal beyond this length. So don't go beyond it. Stay within it, and then you should be okay, right? But the thing is, there's times where we said, look, we just would like to have this just a little longer. Okay, just a little longer. So, there was a box that you can actually put in. So if you had the big yellow cable, like the big yellow cable, right? You can actually put a box inside, right between right here. Yeah, exactly, Terry. So the repeater, if you put a repeater in there, it extended it. Okay. Oh, Terry, do you remember how many repeaters you can actually put in the path? Do you remember? Oh, come on, Terry. There was this thing called 543. Remember? You can put up to 4 repeaters, and I don't know what the 5 was for, but you could put up to 4 repeaters and 3 segments. I think has to be active or something like that. So I never put more than 3 in there, right? Because why? Why couldn't you just go ahead and infinitely put repeaters and infinitely extend a cable? Because the attenuation eventually gets you, right? So even though you're repeating, at the end of the line, the thing has already attenuated. And so Terry, what does a repeater do? What does it do? Signal comes in from one side, and what does it do? That's right. Yeah, it raises it, so it boosts it. Yeah, so it boosts it and then ships across on the other side. So um, the signal that comes out. Oh, what happened here? I hear some noise, but I don't see anybody talking. Okay, as long as the noise is not bothering you guys, I'm okay with it. I just hear a noise now for some reason. Actually, I don't think this is the case. But hang on here. Let me mute myself. No, that wasn't it. Okay, anyway, so the repeater then will boost the signal and ships across it to the other side. Okay, that's basically what it does. And eventually, though, if you put garbage signal, right? So they said, look, there's a limitation as to how many you can put in. So that's what repeaters do. Okay? And then one day, somebody came and said, look, you don't have to pull cables anymore. We have this thing that looks like a little box. And it was like it was a little bit bigger than what I can put on my palm, but it had like 4 ports, right? And the guy also, gave me something that looked like a telephone cable, and it said, look, now all you need to do is on each of these ports, just attach this telephone thingy, and, I'll give you a new network interface card, so now you can attach computers to the other end of it. And then I said, what is this thing? So what is this thing? They give me this box. It's a hub. That's right. Very good, Terry. Yeah. So this is a hub. MST hub with Cat 3. That's right. Yeah, the good old days. And I said, well, what does it do? And they said, look, although it looks like because when you look from the top, it looks like a star configuration. It's physically a star, but logically it's still a bus. And by the way, this thing is called a bus. Okay. So, and the guy told me, says the bus is right inside there. You just don't see it, but it's just exactly the same. It just connects right into it. So you have a logical bus. Okay. And I asked him, so what are these ports? Okay. What do these ports do? And so tell me, Terry, what does these ports do? Each of these ports. That's right. They're tapped directly into the bus. On top of that, it's something that we already know. See the repeats across all the ports. That's right, Terry. And one thing you're not saying is that it boosts it. So when it comes in, it'll boost the signal, and then it'll tap into the bus. So it is a repeater. Okay. So each of the ports are repeaters. So each of these ports, they are repeaters. Okay. So then, from that explanation, I hope you understand that hub is a physical device. It's at the physical layer. And of course, the repeater is at the physical layer. The network interface card is at the physical layer. Okay, so that's basically what happened. And, I had a pretty good life until that time. Then, I got some physical exercise out of the pulling the cables, but now all I did was, stack hubs and connect these cables. Okay. And at this point, it's just a physical thing. And let me see here. There's another thing. Can you think of one more thing that I'm actually thinking about, which is at the physical layer, other than the cables, the hubs, the repeaters? Anything else in the physical layer? Routers? Come on, we're talking about physical layer. Why would you say routers, Gary? Why would that be a physical thing? Are you saying that because it's a box? Oh, right. Okay, yeah, that's right. So, routers aren't exactly physical layer stuff, but yes, it is a physical device. Yeah, but not everything physical works at the physical layer. Yeah, so we'll see though pretty soon how I can see why you would say that. Okay, but then everything would be a physical device, wouldn't it? than virtual devices. Yeah. So let's move forward and see how this kind of all turns out. Okay. All right. The other thing I was thinking about was modems. I'm not sure if you still use modems, but modems are modulator, demodulator, so of signals, change from digital to analog, analog to digital. So that will be a physical device as well. So modems. Okay, and I also put in there network interface cards. Network interface card, although they are physical devices, has a very special information embedded in it, and it's called the MAC address. Right. So MAC address is it's short for Media Access Control Address. Okay, and the MAC addresses are 48 bits. 48 bits, and it's divided into two parts. 24 bits is called organizationally unique identifier. So the, the 24 bits are given uniquely to each of the vendors that makes the network interface card. So it's unique to a vendor like 3Coms and other companies. And the remainder of the 24 bits are serial numbers, so that these vendors can give a unique serial number to each of the network interface card. With a combination, then the 48 bits should be globally unique, right? Globally unique address. Although, so MAC address is a physical address. Okay, just like just like our addresses in homes, right? So if we have in one street two houses with same address, I mean, it's going to cause a confusion for the mailman, right? So we have to have it has to be unique. It has to be unique. But nowadays, though, it used to be that we were all told that it has to be globally unique. Like nowhere in the world shall you have another network interface card with the same MAC address. It's not a hard requirement these days. I mean, just look at the virtual machines and how they handle their MAC addresses. You want to know how virtual machines handle their MAC addresses? Because they do have to have MAC addresses. Anybody work on virtual machines? Very. Dynamically assigned, time of creation. That's right. Yeah, and if you don't do it, there's going to be a problem, right? So if you copy a virtual machine, the MAC addresses usually are copied as well, and you have to kind of say randomly, create something different. But it's random, so it's not really unique. So one thing to remember these days is that MAC address has to be locally unique, not globally unique. They're locally unique and not globally unique. It can be, of course, globally unique, but that's the important part. And we'll talk about why that is. Okay? So just remember, network interface card, it has a MAC address. The next area that we're going to talk about is the data link layer. So here we go. Here's the data link layer. By the way, this is the data link layer. Okay, so data link layer is a special layer. It's one of the layers that has two sub-layers. So it's divided into two, okay? And one is called a MAC layer. The other one's called the LLC layer. Okay, so that's what a data link layer is, right? MAC layer and LLC. MAC is media access control. So MAC. Okay, LLC is logical link control. Okay, so what does it do? I'm going to talk about MAC first. And I have to give you an example using a real life example. So I'm going to be talking about something called the Ethernet. Right? So Ethernet is a layer 1, layer 2 concept, how the unit of data is processed from the digital world, right, all the way to the data link layer, and how they are pushed out into the physical world through the physical layer. Okay, and vice versa. How does it pick up and process that? So It's one way of doing it. Of course, there are other things like token ring and FVBI, and so there are other methodologies. But right now, I'm just going to talk about the Ethernet because it's easy to do, and that's basically what you're testing on anyway. So what happens with these cables, right, when they're connected, is that for Ethernet, it's called a bus, right? So as I mentioned, I'm not sure why it's called a bus, but it's basically where you have the bus with terminators, and then you have connections. All the workstations are connected like that, and the characteristic of an Ethernet is that this bus is what's called a baseband. Okay, so what baseband does is that only one workstation can be talking at any one time, nobody else. So it's like a big old highway that only one car can ride on at any one time. So what happens if two cars try to get on it? Well, they're going to collide, and when they collide, the signals get messed up. Okay? So the media access control, as the name clearly states, right, is going to try to control how to access that media, which is the baseband bus. And this is what happens, and I'm going to explain just the process right now, and there's going to be a name attached to it, and we'll see who can actually name that thing. Okay. So let's say you are A, and you want to talk to C. Okay. So as the MAC layer, you come right to the baseband and you listen, and you listen to see if anybody's talking, right? And let's say you hear nothing. It says, "Oh, great, nobody's talking, so I can send information out." But B is doing the same thing at the same time. It says, listening, not hearing anything. So A and B, by accident, sends information out to the cable at the same time. Okay. Now, the data is going to collide. Okay. And A and B both recognizes the fact that it collided. It's able to sense that it's collided. So once it collides, actually they send a jamming signal. It's like a clearing signal, and say they're going to start everything over again. So A and B will step back random amount of time from the bus, waits random amount of time, and then comes back onto to the cable and say, "Look, I'm going to listen again." And if there's somebody talking, it waits. Okay? If no one's talking, it sends out the information. And now this time, because A and B is random amount of time, hopefully they won't collide, and A's data goes happily to C. Okay? So that, waiting, sending, colliding, waiting, sending, succeeding, what is that thing called? There's a big name for it. And when somebody gets that name, we'll take a break. Okay, I'll give you guys 3 seconds. 2001, 2002, 1003. Okay, so this whole thing that I just described is called CSMA-CD. So here it is. Everybody say, "Oh yeah, that thing," right? So it's called CSMA-CD. What does that stand for? Right now? Carrier, sense, multiple, access, / collision detect. Right? That's basically what happened, right? So carrier is whatever the thing is plugged into. Sense, multiple access, right? It's able to listen and understand that there's more than one person trying to talk. And then it will detect collision, so collision detect. Okay. So that is called CSMACD. Because no one answered that one, I'm going to keep on going for just a little bit more. Okay. And so that's one thing that Mac layer does. It does a CSMACD. By the way, if it's wireless, it's called CSMACA, collision avoidance, because the carrier cannot sense collision, so it's going to try to avoid collision. That's basically the difference. Another thing the MAC address does, the MAC layer does, is this. Remember that, whatever we receive from the higher layer, which is the network layer, the data link layer is going to process it and send it on its way to the physical layer. But once the piece of data is traveling across the physical layer, a lot of things can happen. A lightning can happen, a kid with a big magnet can happen, where ones and zeros may flip. okay? And now the data becomes corrupted, right? So in order for A and B to be assured that the data is not corrupted, it's going to do something like a hash, okay? So they will do something called CRC. Okay, CRC. Does anybody know what a CRC stands for? CRC? No? Nobody knows? It's called cyclic redundancy check. Okay, cyclic redundancy check. So it is like, it will take that unit of information, and by the way, the unit of information that I'm talking about, yes, it is PDU, but in the Ethernet world, they call it the frame, okay? So they'll take the hash, okay, something like a hash of the frame, and then call that an FCS. So in general, it's CRC. It's a check, cyclic redundancy check. It's a hash, okay. But specifically for the Ethernet, this thing is called FCS, okay, and it stands for frame check sequence. Let's go a little bit. Okay, frame check sequence. So it's a hash. As you know, hash is used for integrity purposes, okay? And it tags on the hash value to the tail end of this frame. And that is the trailer information for the frame, okay? So you have the frame. So let's say this, when it wants to send something to C, okay? It's sent in something for the frame. So you have the data, okay? And you're going to have the header information at that layer, data link layer, header. And the header information is going to contain, you'll see pretty soon, the source and destination MAC addresses. Okay? And then the trailer information that's the frame check sequence, FCS. And it attaches the FCS to it. That's the trailer. Okay? So that's one thing that another thing that the MAC does. And secondly, so that's what MAC for A will do. Okay? Now MAC for C will do is this. It receives this frame because the destination MAC address is for it, okay, for C. It'll first check to make sure that this is not corrupted. So it's going to grab hold of the FCS. It's going to recalculate the hash for the frame and then compares the hash. If they're the same, they say, oh, okay, I'm okay with this. If it's different, it's going to throw that away. And so that's basically what FCS on the other side does, what the MAC will do on the other side. And after they check the FCS, is that, okay, so FCS is good, right? So what that means is that this is good, okay? So now I'm going to check the header, right? So when it checks the header on, let's say, C, it checks for the destination MAC address. Compares with its own MAC address, so its MAC address is C. So if the destination MAC address is for C, then it says, oh, it's for me. And then it'll continue to process this and pushes up a layer. Okay? If the MAC address does not match, then it'll say, oh, this is not for me, and throw that out, right? Do not process it. Okay? And you may be asking a question, why would something that is not really meant for C go to C? That's the characteristic of a bus. With a bus, when I send a frame from A to C, B gets it. And if there's, D, C, and E, E and F and G, they'll also get it too. Right? That's the characteristic of the bus. Everybody gets it in the bus if they're connected. But what happens is, let's say B gets this one, which is meant for C. So it checks the FCS. If it's good, it looks at the destination MAC address. And checks it with its own MAC address and say they don't match. It's not for me, and tosses it out. So how the bus works is that everybody picks it up, and they're all supposed to check for FCS and check for the destination MAC address. If it's not a match, throw it out. If it is a match, pick it up. That's basically what happens. Okay? So those are the functions of the Mac, right? Now, here's one question. There is one exception where the workstation will pick up the frame even though it is not meant for it. Right. So what I'm saying is that B will pick up C's frame and happily process it under a certain condition. Does anybody know what that condition is? Does anybody know? Nobody knows? Come on, really? That's in networking, right? Okay. All right. You don't know. Okay. It will pick it up if it's on the promiscuous mode. Yeah, Raymond. So there you go. Right. I hope that's what you're trying to say. Packet sniffer, exactly. So the packet sniffer requires that you pick up everything, even though it's not meant for you, right? Because you want to see everything. But in order to do that, you have to change the behavior of the Mac. I hope you see, so that it doesn't pulse out the frames that doesn't belong to it. It picks up everything. So what you do is you turn on what's called a promiscuous mode. It's promiscuous. It will just like pick up anybody. so so then, but you do that through the drivers for the network benefits part, which we'll be talking about a little bit later. Okay, we are finished with Mac, and we're at a little bit over the top of the hour. So let's go ahead. Are there any questions so far? Because next thing, when we come back from 10-minute break, we're going to be talking about LLC, okay, and the devices that belong at the data link layer, and some of the issues, security issues that we find at the data link layer. Okay, any questions? Okie dokie. So, all right. So I'm going to start the clock, and let us go ahead and take